Welcome back, hunters. I'm Agent Cara Blackwood, your assigned lead paranormal investigator. Today's hunt is full of chaotic evil. The case itself is codenamed Spiritus Vindictus. Let's dive into the case files that I've gathered here for you. But before I do, make sure that you hit that like button, subscribe, and share. And also hit that nutty bell so you can stay vigilant and help keep the world safe from all those ghostly horrors. Our case begins in the city of Lawrence, Kansas, where a family of three, a superstitious mother, religious father, and their one daughter lived quite the calm life in an old, restored Catholic church. Which this church was located off of Story Street. The church itself had a long-standing history of past pastors holding sermons there, but with also lots of bloodshed from a tragedy of a small child getting trapped in the basement ages ago. It had long since been vacant due to people touring the actual property and finding it to be haunted. It wasn't until way later that when the father had laid eyes on it and saw the potential to remake the property and renovate the church into a home and a happy, blessed place instead of something of evil. He knew the bones of the church, including the stained glass, was very good, and he refurbished it to keep the original style, and modern-esque amenities were put inside. The parents met while the father was doing sermons at her hometown church. She didn't always consider herself to be a religious person, but after she lost her first husband to cancer and fell on hard times, she began going. His words and views struck a chord in her soul and also her very heart, and she fell in love. He took notice of her right away, and how diligent she was to show up every week, and he took notice of how her superstitions, and found it really endearing how she liked to carry salt and a cross with her at all times. He too found himself falling for her. Mary Allen, aged 30 years old, grew up being taught that certain signs or actions could lead to very serious consequences. She was often found carrying books on histories of superstitions and how to protect herself from any that may cause any sort of harm to her or her family. Believing she had to follow each of the practices, otherwise her life could end up in grave danger. Some practices include not walking underneath ladders, throwing salt over her shoulder, and not stepping on any sidewalk cracks, lest she break her mother's back. Also avoiding any black cats, so to make sure that they didn't cross her path and the like. She was average height, around 5'6" tall, and had short black hair, usually a bit messy. Mary's time in the workforce wasn't very lucky. She bounced from job to job due to her weird behavior. According to her coworkers, like bringing talismans and placing them all around the offices, or getting salt in coworkers' eyes from throwing it when they were passing by, to even putting salt circles around her desk. And each time it led to her termination because she was always deemed as impossible to work with and a disturbance and danger to the workplace. Eventually, she gave up and decided on another course of action. Another approach, if you will, of starting her own business of talisman making / consulting. Consulting for those who shared her beliefs. James Allen was 33 years old. On the other hand, knew his calling since birth. He practically came out of his mother's womb wearing a priest suit. He was 5'8", with pale skin and bald. His passions always stemmed from his faith and everything surrounding it. He even went as far as holding mock sermons at recess when he was still in school with his classmates. Although, after a certain period of time, he got detention for gathering too many followers and creating a cult, essentially, leading to some students getting bullied terribly for not following his words. James could never see himself wanting to work anywhere else but inside a church. and serving the people to help share his faith and its ideals. That was his whole existence. That is why, when he laid eyes on Mary, he was absolutely certain she had been sent to him as a gift to cherish and hold dear. They courted and went on dates not long after she joined the church. He proposed to her during one of the church events, and it was at that time they both agreed to wed in the church so their bond could be blessed for many, many years. And with that blessing, about a couple years after marriage, Mary became pregnant with a girl. Her name was Sarah Allen, and she was born February 11th, 2005. So they lived their lives full of faith and love, which soon became disrupted beyond belief, that dreadful year of 2010. August 5th, 2010. James Allen had just finished up service and made it back home to organize his thoughts and prepare for the next week, when out of the corner of his eye, something glinted, or seemed to glimmer off of the doorframe. It was relatively dark, with merely candlelight on his office, much like this candlelight. That is not working. So he couldn't make it out too much. It was then he remembered that he had received donations from a patron who gave the church complimentary UV flashlights. So, to protect his eyes from the harsh overhead lighting, he grabbed a flashlight to investigate closer. He shone the flashlight over where he thought he saw something, and then jumped a little as he made out a very evident shape of a handprint. James chuckled at himself, believing that his little girl must have been playing around in his office. She did have a very adventurous spirit, much like her mother. He reminded himself to ask her about it later at dinner. August 7th, 2010. A couple days later, Mary was busy preparing dinner. A meatloaf dish with mashed potatoes, humming to herself as she worked. Her daughter was busy playing in the living room, and she needed to grab another spice from the cabinet. But just as she reached up, she saw scratch words that had been etched into the wall above the kitchen sink. She read them, and they said, "Come play with me." Mary screamed and then crossed herself, then frantically began covering all the thresholds with salt, even the entrances with lines of salt. Sarah merely only asked and giggled, asking Mommy, "What are you doing?" And she told her it was a protection game. So her daughter joined in too. Mary showed her husband once dinner was complete, and he found himself rather worried. Something definitely appeared to be present in their home. August 16th, 2010. It was allegedly reported by the whole family that when they least expected it, doors of the house would open and creak and then slam shut throughout random times in the night. Their daughter Sarah frequently would get woken up to crying and began not wanting to sleep alone due to nightmares and fear. The parents were fearful and didn't know what to do. Mary furiously made talismans and stuck them all over the house, and James worked hard to pray and hold on to hope that there wasn't an evil presence in their home that was supposed to be full of joy and love. These actions only seemed to make matters far more worse for the unfortunate family. September 6th, 2010. There was even more disturbances. James would be working at his desk when suddenly there would be intense cold spots where he could see his breath. When he moved to another part of the room, the temperature itself returned to normal. When he called his wife into the room to check to make sure that he wasn't letting his mind play tricks on him, her eyes widened in terror, and she quickly ordered him to gather as many crucifixes to keep close for the whole family. James readily agreed, then continued his work. A few hours later, and deep into paperwork, he felt an intense warmth and saw a glow emitting from his right side. Lurching back, he saw that the crucifix that he had placed on his desk had erupted into flames and turned to dust. Something evil was at work here. October 5th, 2010. A hunter in the area was attending the church service in the area, and part of the sermon towards the end was the man asking for prayers for his family in the trying times and relaying the horrors he was experiencing with his family. He voices he and his family were going to research and gain help from sources read about in another city. The hunter approached after and offered the expertise of the lodge. With the evidence before us and the eyewitness accounts, whatever entity that was remaining on this property definitely needed to be sent back into the veil. But that is where we come in. Yes. With our know-how, professional tools, and go-get-'em attitude, we will hunt these entities down and bring this family peace. The hunt will be dangerous. Be advised and ever on your guard, because around every corner, it could be lurking. The history of this entity goes back to ancient times, and if left alone, will surely devour this family until they too become vengeful spirits. All the tools have been provided to you, courtesy of the lodge, to adequately exercise and gather evidence of their presence. On December 8th, 2010, at approximately 8 p.m., an experienced hunter approached the family's church house. The family in question was away consulting a superstition/protection expert, so the hunter was able to gather what they needed without being discovered or disturbed to have any eyewitness accounts of their actual hunt. One male hunter by the name of Toby Jones walked in holding a crucifix in his hands while also scanning the scene with a video camera. I'd say about after an hour of searching and surveying, first the living room, then the kitchen, and finally the office, no orbs seemed to be present, so he could cross that off the list of evidence. As he entered the office, though, the door slammed shut, and the room immediately felt colder. Even considering it was in the winter, it was far, far colder. The hunter jumped to action, reaching for his thermometer to check the temperature. And sure enough, he found the temperature was far below freezing. As a precaution, and due to the intensity of how quickly the entity began to hunt, he placed a UV flashlight on the desk, powered on, and facing the door, and then placed the crucifix in front of the door, on the ground. Toby then proceeded to hide in a nearby closet to wait safely, to avoid harm. Hours upon hours seemed to pass him by. He recited all the ghost names in his head to pass the time, reciting them alphabetically. When suddenly, whoosh! The crucifix burst into flames, and the door slams repeatedly, over and over again. The occurrence is reported around 0100 hours. Once the entity calmed down, the hunter crept to gather the UV flashlight, and as he does, it shines on the door to reveal multiple bright handprints on the door jamb. He smiles and snaps a quick photo of the print's cheek before swiftly exiting the office. He wanted to do a quick check of the kitchen, where the couple reportedly mentioned scary writing on the wall. He approached with intent and found what he was looking for in the big scratch letters of "Come play with me." Toby snapped another photo and knew it was good he took precautions, because the evidence in question pointed towards a very dangerous entity. He reported back to base, safely being able to extract at 1:30 hours. Evidence of cold temperatures, UV, and ghost writing were gathered on the scene, unveiling the identity of what the entity was to be a demon. The hunt was violent and dangerous, but ultimately they were able to be rid of the ghost. The evidence uncovered was highly valuable to setting the family free from its haunting presence. Any hunters out there, or those that are curious to join the fight, please refer to our Hunter's Guide to the Paranormal for more information on how to survive, and for some, to exorcise, contain, or elude these entities. Don't rest easy, hunters, for there are many more investigations, many more ghosts at large that will need to be solved and vanquished. Many more poor, unfortunate souls that are unable to rest easily. Until next time we convene together in this hunter's cabin. Stay safe, protect the innocent, trust your instincts, and remember, the hunt is never done. Happy hunting!